We now welcome in Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period, and a lot is being made, Dave, of this Toronto defense. It hasn't been great, even though they were good last year. They're looking to get some upgrades. What have you seen?
Yeah, well, Brad Treliving right now is starting to do his due diligence and look at different options to see what is going to be available to him later on in the season. Doesn't necessarily mean he's trying to pull something off at the moment because of their cap situation. It's going to be a little bit difficult. But right now, they're going through the exploratory stage, looking to see who is available, who's potentially going to be available later on in the season, and how that might look like price-wise down the road as they try to add to their back end. Before the break, you guys were talking about, and Dave was talking about, the defensive deficiencies with this group. That's something they've been trying to address. And they have an opportunity to look firsthand tonight. They're playing the Calgary Flames. Chris Tanev and Nikita Zadorov are two guys on their radar. They've had some conversations with Calgary about. They'll be able to take a look at those guys to bring in somebody either on the right side or who's a little interchangeable. Nikita Zadorov shoots the left, but plays both sides. Tanev, who's somebody that Morgan Riley tried to lobby for when Tanev was a free agent a few years ago. That's going to be another target for him. Sean Walker in Philadelphia, another potential as well. But right now, Toronto's just looking to see what the options are going to be and what those price tags are going to be as they look to add later on in the season.
I'll steal your phrase there, price tags. All right, so what are you hearing right now about contract extensions for Brandon Montour and Sam Reinhart?
Yeah, well, it certainly sounds like the Florida Panthers are trying to get a lot of their internal work done a little bit early on in the season. We know that Montour has missed the start of the season as he's been recovering from shoulder surgery, but they are inching closer towards a long-term extension. It sounds like 7-8 years for Montour, and the benefit of being in one of the tax-free states, the number, the AAV on it is likely going to be a little bit lower than it may be in other potential markets. You're looking at something around that $7 million mark for Brandon Montour. They've had conversations. They're progressing along in getting that done. And once that does get finalized, because it certainly looks like it's going in that direction, they're going to shift their focus a little bit to Sam Reinhart. He's also on an expiring contract this year, off to a hot start. They haven't started negotiations just yet, but they've made it clear to his camp that at some point soon, they are going to explore an extension with him. They'd like to keep him. Those conversations will begin in the not-too-distant future.
Another name that's kind of just hanging around, we're wondering, we're waiting, Patrick Kane. Do you have a timetable for someone signing him?
Well, we're looking at around the next week or two as to where he ends up potentially going and which team he's going to join. Now, some of the teams that have expressed interest, like Florida that we just talked about, obviously the Buffalo Sabres there, the New York Rangers still in the mix, the Dallas Stars, of course, Colorado, of course. These are teams, some of them, that are going to have to make some types of cap adjustments if they want to bring in Patrick Kane. It looks like it's not just for this season. It may be a multi-year type of deal for Patty Kane. But he's on schedule in terms of his health, and at the same time, also along his timeline that he's relayed his camps over at CAA have relayed to other teams, that around mid-November is when he'd like to narrow down his choices and then make decisions in and around the Thanksgiving period in the United States. So he's on track. He'll start to narrow things down to about 2 or 3 teams in the next week, and then ultimately they're going to have to figure out how they can make things work from a cap perspective.
Another name that could potentially be on the move, Carter Hart. Could he be the answer to, I won't say all of the problems for Edmonton, but maybe some of the problems for the Oilers?
Potentially, certainly. This was a player that they kicked tires on in the offseason. Now, my understanding is they haven't had any discussions with the Philadelphia Flyers since the start of the season has gotten underway. But Carter Hart is somebody that the Philadelphia Flyers are willing to listen to. There doesn't appear to be a deal imminent right now. He was supposed to start this evening against the Anaheim Ducks. He is actually battling a bout of food poisoning, so that's going to have to push him off a little bit. But he's a player that Philadelphia has acknowledged to other teams that he is willing to listen on. That they are willing to listen on. And we know that the Edmonton Oilers are exploring all of their options to this point. Not only him, there seems to be some internal interest with respect to a guy going back to the Florida Panthers in Spencer Knight. And they're also looking at other elements both on the blue line and up front to see if they can make any type of move. Now, any significant addition is going to result in a roster player leaving. They don't have a ton of cap space. If they are going to get creative, and if the individuals in charge right now are still in place by next week and on, they're going to look to make some significant, to make some additions, one of which could be a significant one between the pipes.
Dave, I know we are very early on in the season, but seats do get warm. DJ Smith, Ottawa, how hot is that seat?
It's warm. I'd say lukewarm at this point. With the changes that they've already made in Ottawa, with Pierre Dorion on the outs, with Steve Staios coming in as interim GM, he's already the president of hockey ops there. Ultimately, it's going to take a significant falling off the cliff for this group to make a coaching change mid-season. Now, DJ Smith is in the final year of his contract, and the anticipation is this will be his last season in Ottawa. But when they make that decision, will be dictated by their overall performance. If they lose, for example, 10 straight, then that may handcuff them in terms of having to make a decision early. But once that new GM comes in, is likely to make the decision ultimately on who the coach is going to be moving forward. So right now, barring a substantial losing streak, DJ Smith will be sticking around in Ottawa. But we'll see how this team performs. That'll ultimately determine how long of a shelf life he does have. But as I mentioned, the expectation going into next season, they'll have somebody new back there.
Dave, enjoy the night. Have a good weekend. Always love catching up, and we will talk again very soon.